So all morning so far, we've heard about brands, and we've heard about creators, but there's one common denominator that really links them all together, and it's probably the most important part of it. So to talk all about fans, or should I say hashtag fans, please welcome the moderator to the stage. Probably the reason that the YouTube Fan Fest actually exists, because he's the guy that that first supported the Music Matters Live Festival on YouTube. Please go crazy. A very good friend of ours, Tony Zameczkowski.
So good morning, everybody. So as you know, fans have been around for a decade. But now there is a next generation of fans empowered by new technologies and new platforms. So basically, mobile is the first screen for them, and social media is their world. We went through around like 15 interviews when we decided to do this book. So we interviewed fans and professionals from the media industry and some of the creators as well. And 3 words were repeated each time we had the interview. So the first one was authenticity. The second one was accessibility, and the last one was interaction. Just to share a little anecdote I had, 2 years ago. When we organized, the first Fan Fest here in Singapore 2 years ago, I was actually amazed with the passionate community of fans. Those fans were screaming when they saw, their stars, and those stars were taking selfies with them. Those stars are not calling them fans, they are calling them their friends. They are making themselves always accessible and authentic. So these empowered fans are clearly redefining the media industry those days. So what we are going to do during this panel is we look at this revolution from 3 different perspectives. First one, the platform. Second one is the creator. And third one is more the multi-channel network. So let me call on stage my 2 former colleagues from YouTube, Patrick Walker, CEO of Rightster, and my former boss, Dave Powell, Director of Community Management globally, and one of the most popular media company in India, Arunabh Kumar, CEO of TVF. So, Dave, let me kick things off with you. So, from your point of view, what is the main difference between, fans a decade ago and fans today?
Sure. So I think you see a big difference in, I think a year ago or 10 years ago you had audiences. And I think today, especially on YouTube, we think we have fans. And an audience sits back and watches the program that you've created for them at the time you've created for them. A fan base wants to lean in and wants to engage with that content. They choose what to watch, they choose when to watch it, they choose to curate, they choose to create their own versions of it, they choose to share it. And what you find is you find very engaged fans. A great example is on Tuesday, prior to coming here, I was looking on Twitter, and a group of teenagers in Manila started tweeting, "Bring YouTubers to Manila," because they started seeing all of their favorite YouTubers starting to tweet that they were landing in Singapore or they're on their way to Singapore. And their voice was so loud and so passionate that they actually started trending #4 globally on Twitter, which is a pretty amazing thing. And you wouldn't see that happening with other mediums. So I think you just find a really much more passionate and engaged audience. Another great example is if you look at Simon and Martina, the Eat Your Kimchi channel in Seoul. They decided they wanted to start engaging with their fans offline. So they opened a cafe called You Are Here, so that Koreans can start engaging with international travelers can connect with them. And on their opening day of a coffee shop, they had 1,000 people show up to support them for the opening of their coffee shop. and had to shut down streets in Seoul for their opening.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've never seen a coffee shop with that size of an opening before.
Arunabh, I think you have an interesting story to share with the audience. How did you get the idea of creating TVF? It seems that your first project has been rejected by some of the top broadcasters in India.
Yeah. I think I have only thanks. I have to only be very grateful and thankful to them. And I also remember a small memory which I had on this stage 2 years back when we did the first Fan Fest. And we represented India. So I had told that I'll never wear a suit ever in my life. So that was me like in the first Fan Fest on this very same stage. That's why I chose a very semi-formal so that, but I think I used to do a small research back in 2010-11, and I was going to colleges and I was asking everyone below 34 years in India that what's your last television memory? And the only two answers that we used to get is either live sports, which is a match or any games, and the second was news. The insight being that the entire generation of these people had stopped watching fiction, scripted or entertainment content on smaller screen. And India has the largest population below 34 years old. So that was a big gap which I felt that needs to be filled. And so the Viral Fever Media Labs, the company, we pitched some television shows to a couple of youth television channels in the country. There are only 3 of them, MTV, Channel V and Bindas. And I created a show called College Cutiapa, and I pitched them. And all of them rejected the show saying that, okay, we have done our focus group research and our research says no Indian youth wants to watch your content. So I was like, I'm not surprised at that, but I'm surprised that you were able to reach out to Indian youth in less than 3 days. I think that doesn't seem plausible. But convinced with my whole idea of trying to do it, and that's when we started sort of building an online television. I didn't have enough money, otherwise I would have started to make my own satellite channel, but and that's why we use YouTube, websites, Facebook, and the entire social media gamut, and so thought of the silly idea and irrational optimism of trying to build a television channel. And here we are 3 years later. We have done a couple of shows. We have some shows which are very popular, and I think we've managed, if not bigger than MTV, then at least as big as them, I hope.
That's amazing. So, Patrick, tell me, Rightster recently acquired like 2 large companies, Base79 and Viral Spiral. You have recently been appointed as the CEO of the company. So tell us a little bit about the new Rightster. What are your priorities for this year?
Well, it's never a dull moment, that's for sure. I was, as you mentioned, I used to look after the YouTube business in Europe, and then I went to Base79, which was the biggest independent multi-channel network outside the US. One thing we noticed was that although our business was growing quickly, there was a lot of opportunity off YouTube. And also you don't want to be too dependent on any single platform, as much as I love YouTube. And so we thought coming together with Rightster as well as Viral Spiral Group, which represents thousands of the most iconic clips online, like Charlie Bit My Finger, Sneezing Panda, Fenton, and Roomba Cat. So bringing together viral assets as well as relationships with brands as well as off-YouTube technology and YouTube expertise, it was something greater than the sum of the parts. So I've spent the last several months just bringing these teams together, developing a new kind of culture as an independent global and local business. We have offices in 11 countries, and what we're trying to do is reflect the international nature of the web itself. And that's translating into really exciting partnerships with both creators, but also with big brands. So we run all the international channels for 20th Century Fox, for example, and all their social video influencer campaigns for every film release in all these markets as well. We work with big brands like Microsoft and Turkish Airlines. And on the other side, we're helping creators and partners in individual countries like France reach a global audience and get bigger campaigns across multiple markets. So the global-local approach has been very useful and I think differentiating our position. And of course, in a market like Asia Pacific, the opportunity is enormous. So in terms of what's coming next is building a strong company culture for combined businesses, but also leaning in and trying to capture the essence of the growth opportunities for both creators as well as rights holders and also brands in developing markets.
Got it. So Dave, you recently took an extended role as Director of Community globally. You're also a creator yourself, a very successful creator on Google+. So what would be your advice for a brand to effectively target fans and millennials?
Yeah, I think, I was actually at dinner last night with Stuart, who was just speaking, and we were talking about this, and we were talking about choices you make, and he was asking me a lot of questions about the choices I make as a creator, and how do you decide? Like, I just recently did a book, and most of the decisions I made were not based on business. They weren't logical decisions because it was more profitable or it was better. It was because I thought I could build a better product, because I could, give people that enjoy my content a better product. And we're going to be doing a project with Stuart, and the whole way we're approaching the project is about being very, very authentic, right? And when we first started, we talked about, in the beauty space, if you wanted to go work with a Michelle Phan, for example, you can go work with her when she's very big and probably pay a lot of money and have a very business-based relationship, or you could say, we want this community to become a much bigger community, and in a more selfless way, help to build a really strong, vibrant community. And in doing so, you're going to very authentically connect with their fans. You're going to very authentically build relationships with those creators. John Green, who's a very famous YouTuber and a very famous author, wrote the book The Fault in Our Stars, which has been #1 on the bestseller list for 153 weeks now. Very popular, influential YouTuber, made a comment when he was speaking a few weeks ago in New York and said, I don't care how many people watch what I create, I care how many people love what I create. And he talked about how he's not in the eyeball business, he's in the community building business. It was a really interesting perspective, and there were a lot of advertisers that were really taken back by that.
I think I also remember the one thing that he said, that I'm not here to convince advertisers to spend on YouTube, but I'm here to scare them if they don't. I think that was very effective in terms of the conviction and the kind of engagement that we see with brands on our viewership.
So Arunabh, speaking of which, your channels have around like 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube. How do you explain that you have the same number of subscribers as traditional media companies, or even more? How do you explain that? How do you explain that you managed to really engage well with this audience?
I think, of course, I don't have a quantitative answer to this, but I do have a lot of qualitative answers to this. Is that because we have done so many shows on YouTube, on our platform, online, and every time we have had one of our talents or one of us being hoarded out by one of them, hey, you were in that show, And we have also done television shows. And we have never had, in our 36 months, we have never had one single person come to us in India and say that, hey, I saw you on television show. And that has never happened. And even our least watched show, somebody has come up to us and say that, hey, we watched you in that show. So I think that just shows to some extent that a lot of these people who at least love us or would want to watch us regularly have completely skipped. And I think one major difference that I think in terms of how the fans react to you when they meet you and how you can gauge the love and loyalty is, I think the main difference that has happened in the last 20 years is, initially if we used to see a star on an airport or somewhere in the club, we would be like, oh, it's Michelle Pfeiffer. Look at Michelle Pfeiffer. Now, hey, Michelle Phan, I want a selfie with you. I think that's the biggest change that has happened. That's how people used to be intimidated with the establishment mainstream stars, and now they just come up to us as if they know us. I think that is and that just sort of says us that, okay, I think we might be reaching out to them, definitely in more engaging fashion, and in terms of numbers, I think we are still waiting for somebody to come to us and say, hey, we watched you on television.
I was going to say, I think there's also two aspects, right? I think one, the stars of traditional media are stars not because of their fans, but because of the brokers or the producer or whoever put them in that situation. And Lily Singh, who goes by Superwoman on YouTube, who's wildly popular, made a comment when she was speaking a couple of weeks ago at an event I was at. And she said, I am popular, I'm successful because of my fans. She's like, so I want every experience I ever have with a fan to be the best in the world. And I might be exhausted, I might be tired, but this is their one moment to interact with me, and I want them to remember me forever.
Absolutely. So Arunabh, you were one of the first in India to create a branded entertainment group and working very closely with the brands. Do you mind to share your experience and how, to target effectively fans and be relevant?
I think I have some very sweet and bitter stories about that, because the Viral Fever Media Labs, when I started, so I used to do branded content, and we used to get as less as $500 to make branded content for brands. That's like 7 years back. And we did that for 2 years, and then we launched our online network, which is TVF1. And I remember 2.5 years back when we did our first web series, for a brand, for a global brand, and we put it out there. We still had a good success in viewership, but we had some people literally abusing us in blatant, blunt languages that you guys have become sellout, blah, 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 you know, son of a boom, son of a bam, you guys are doing this, you guys are doing that. And we were like completely shocked because we would have never pulled off that big budget action comedy with, you know, little bit money that we had. We needed the brand to support us. And cut to 2 years now, most of our shows are branded content. We just created Permanent Roommates with one of a big startup in the country. And we had very few people commenting that, okay, you have become a sellout. So for each of these comments, we have at least 30 more fans of us replying back to him and giving it back to him that you son of a boom, son of a bam, you should send them checks, you should send them money if you want them to make these shows. So I think we are very happy with that, which has happened in the community on its own, that they understand the commercial implications and the support that a brand provides. And also, some of these shows, like Permanent Roommates, it's a 20-minute web series, which has become, I think, one of the most watched branded properties in the world. And we have been able to do that only because a brand was there and we did a lot of writing. So of course, the craft is very tough to crack a branded solution, but in terms of community and fans' perspective, they have started to understand and embrace the values of the brand if they support us well. And if they know how to walk the rope, I think they're just there to support the brand as well as the creator.
So Patrick, you guys are working very closely with advertisers. We heard about the Turkish airline campaigns, #Fortune Traveler. Would you mind to talk a little bit more about this specific example and how do you guys work with advertisers and also creators?
Yeah, sure. Well, Turkish Airlines was introduced to us. We were given a brief along with other companies, and we really thought about it. And we went out to our network. We have what we call the Global Rightster Influencer Network. And it's not just people in our network, but people that we've worked with, that we like, that we trust, and where there's a mutual connection, where we talk about ideas. And we came up with a campaign that wasn't just YouTubers on our network, but across 10 different YouTube networks, where they would bring their own style. We listened to the brand, what they wanted to achieve. And then we asked each of these YouTubers to come up with an idea in their own voice. We brought them all to Istanbul, where they took part in a secret ceremony where they have this magical sort of fortune-telling ceremony with a rabbit choosing your future. And they were all given a destination. Then they were all sent off to Kathmandu, Bangkok, Paris, London, New York to film a video of that city in their own style. So the creativity was in the hands of the YouTuber. And we spent a lot of time getting the creators to really be open about their own interpretation of the task. And we spend a lot of time getting the brand to really trust the process and let that creator do their thing, because they are able to enjoy the benefits of that creator's audience if they really allow them to interpret the brand's intent in their own style. And so that's really the difference with, say, TV broadcast and advertising, or working through a broadcaster and talent to tell a story that gets the biggest visibility for the brand. What we're doing here is a direct relationship between the brand and the creator, which we broker because you also need to make sure that there's, you know, it's a bit of a jungle out there in terms of managing much of the talent. But ultimately, you know, you saw, I don't know if you saw the video yesterday, 14% increase in sales. The videos were beautiful. Everyone from Devon Supertramp to, you know, talent across Europe, North America, Asia Pacific. It was a very powerful campaign, and now they're coming back to do it again, you know, in a new market, in a new style. The whole idea is, A, collaborate with the fans to get, and the talent to get their input on what you can do. Collaborate across multi-channel networks as well to get the best talent for the brand campaign. We really need to be collaborative and work together. And also to make sure that you really listen carefully to the needs of the brand, but you prepare for them to be slightly surprised, and prepare for them and help them understand that the process itself needs to work its way through. But the results can be phenomenal. We're having the same sort of success with, you know, Microsoft and Microsoft Lumia with their phone, putting in the hands of creators to let them go make whatever they want to make. So the key here is not to force your message through the creator, but to allow the creators to interpret the essence of your brand in a way that you know, makes sense for all parties.
And resonates with their audience, right? I mean, they're people that are successful on YouTube are successful because they're very genuine and authentic, and they've built an audience around sort of accessibility to their life.
Exactly.
And well, they're not an actor, so you don't want to necessarily take your message and say, please relay this message to your audience, because it'll come off as not authentic.
Exactly. There was a really good piece of research, I recommend you look it up, from Narina Hertz, who's an economist, and she did a piece of work called Generation K, after Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger Games, about young millennials. They don't trust big business. They did a survey of these young millennials, and they found that only 6% trusted big business to do the right thing, compared to 60% for people over 50. That's a huge gap. Who do they trust? They trust people that they feel connected to and close to, their friends, but also the YouTuber social video stars, because they feel there's, as you said, an authentic relationship there. And so brands working through creators is not, if you will, cheating the system. It's allowing those creators to give a nod to your brand as okay, turn to their audience and say, you know what, this brand's okay, and therefore find an authentic way to reach them without shoving it down their throat. There's a good reason that a lot of folks don't spend time on television that are in this age group, is just they don't want to be spoken to. They don't want to be seen as being a consumer where you pour advertising down their throats and they just spit out cash to buy the product. They want a true, authentic connection. And you can get that through creators. Now the creators have to be very careful to not fall prey to the green monster of cash, because the checks are getting bigger, the opportunities are getting larger, and the risk to lose that audience starts to become real as they start to make decisions. And I question and wonder whether, with the likes of Vessel offering big chunks of cash for people to put content on exclusively, and in some ways possibly alienate their YouTube audiences or other social audiences, is going to remove them. So each creator has to think carefully about that process. But it's an exciting space. I mean, it's changing every day as well.
I think, like rightly, Dave said that they don't want to see a manufactured machinery and PR working to make your image. And we saw this last year when we released second generation of our shows, and we launched a chat show that I was talking to you about, which is India's version of Between Two Ferns. And we never thought that we'll have the biggest star in the country or the political leader. So in the entire history of India, no political leader has ever come onto a show or any form of content. And they were more than willing to come on board, because they thought that, okay, this is a place, this is a platform where they can be authentic, and we try to create a show in which we can humanize the popular faces behind them. And the more you do that, the more authentic and honest that you are as a person, as a creator, as a star, or as a celebrity on this platform, I think people connect to you more.
Yeah, we were amazed. Sorry, the one thing, you would be shocked when you talk to some of these creators. When we were first starting getting into it, we would do a deal with, for example, Barclays Bank in the UK, where they had a very big budget to get creators to work with them to tell the stories about saving your money and doing these sorts of responsible things. And we're talking about pretty big chunks of cash. We'd go to some creators, 18, 19-year-olds, and like, would you like X tens of thousands of pounds to make a 3-minute video? We're like, nah, no, I don't want it. You're kidding me. This is a big check. And they're like, no. And we found some that wanted to do it because actually they had an emotional connection with the brand, and it came out to be perfectly good, but you had to be willing to accept that these guys will literally turn down big piles of cash if they don't feel connected, because retaining that relationship with the fan base is so critical to their growth. And by the way, although YouTube is a good source of income for them, they're making much more money on direct brand relationships now than they're making through the YouTube ad share, revenue share. I mean, sometimes in the multiples through direct brand relationships. And that's important as well.
And they don't want to lose that fan base.
Exactly.
So they're very cautious.
It's committing digital suicide. If you try to mess with your fans and your loyal, like we said, because they're all creators themselves. They'll start sending you abuses, comments. They'll threaten you that I'm going to unsubscribe if you do this again. So I mean, they have their own ways of getting back to you.
You remember Fred? You guys remember Fred? You don't, right? Exactly. He lost his audience because he went to Nickelodeon, took a big chunk. They did a movie, and he's gone.
So Dave, we saw with Gangnam Style that, borders don't matter anymore for fans, right? I mean, how do you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of the democratic nature of YouTube, right? Is the audience decides what they watch. I mean, if you were programming a TV station, for example, you would just sort of naturally say, if it's in the US, you're going to choose English. If it's in Japan, you're going to choose Japanese. You wouldn't think the most popular video on YouTube is not in English. I mean, Gangnam Style passed last year 2 billion views. The video continues to get a million views a day, which is just staggering to be able to get that level of visibility. At YouTube Music Awards last year, the #1 video of the year was actually a Korean video from Girls' Generation. Yeah. And it beat out music from Justin Bieber, from Miley Cyrus, from Lady Gaga. And it's just, you wouldn't think it's possible, but the fans are choosing what they want to watch, and they choose who to share it with and how it gets distributed.
I mean, how often do we even celebrate birthdays of a software or an IT product? I mean, 2 weeks back, we were all holding the biggest cake and we were having cramps in our hands, and 70 people from all over the world had gathered together to celebrate birthday of YouTube. I haven't celebrated a birthday of Microsoft Office or Winamp or Xbox or PlayStation or any of these. But I think what YouTube has managed, and that's personally my love for the platform, because it's completely, sheerly democratizes and gives anyone with a camera and capability to just put something out there and build their own community.
So Arunabh, it's a good segue to talk about other platforms. Obviously, you have a very strong website, but do you also explore opportunities with other platforms outside of YouTube?
Yeah. See, I think that's a reality that we have to live with, because as we are a studio, we intend to be a bigger studio. We want to make India's version of Mad Max and Avengers. And those are 90 million, 100 million, 500 million pieces of content. How do you try and make that? So while we do 300 pieces of videos and shows on YouTube platform and on YouTube channels, we do aspire as creators to make our version of Friends or Seinfeld or Big Bang Theory. And you need a lot of cash. While we have succeeded to convince brands basis, like we've been working with 50 brands in India. We have worked with Airtel, we are working with a couple of more beverages brand. We are launching the biggest budget show that we have made ever with a beer brand in India on YouTube. So we are doing that, but the opportunity that a platform sometimes gives you and the big checks that they come just gives you an edge to become better creator and use the toys. And all of us aspire for that. So that's the reality. I don't think I'll lie and say that, no, I always want to hold a S6 Galaxy and keep making films on that. No, I do want to use IMAX cameras sometime, and they are very costly, so you need the money for that.
So Patrick, you recently announced a partnership with Spotify because they recently launched their video platform. Yeah. So what do you think? How do you see opportunities with other platforms outside of YouTube?
Yeah, Spotify 2 nights ago launched the video part of the platform, which is quite big news actually. They have 25 billion hours of music consumed per month. And so I'm curious to see how they're going to convert that into video consumption. And we're one of many media partners, if you like, that are contributing content to that. It's content that is also on YouTube, but we also distribute across 7,000 publisher websites. What's happening now is that the speed of the bandwidth, the accessibility on mobile, smartphones, the low cost of storage, the ease of production is meaning that video is really ubiquitous. And that means that all websites of all kinds, from newspapers to magazine websites, broadcasters, and creators that have their own and operated websites as well, need to be powered by video. So we're working both with YouTube, of course, but we're working across a distributed network, which makes good sense because you want to be where people gather, and it's not always going to be on one side or the other. But you also want to have a diversified business, whether you are a business like ours, or whether you're a creator, or whether you're a broadcaster. You don't want too much dependent on one single platform because things might change, and you want to have some consistency. I'm very curious to see what will happen as Facebook starts to introduce, when they do, who knows when they will, monetization opportunities, because that could be explosive. Snapchat is a whole other language of content creation with Snapchat Discover, and I hear they have very good CPMs there. And I think you have to experiment and develop audiences and diversify. But you also have to be selective. I mean, we've invested a lot of time in some platforms that just turned out to be a complete waste of time. So now, we're much more selective, and we actually expect on behalf of our creators to get some commercial benefit to being early, because it's just hard to tell, and there's so much attention needed for the places that do well. You don't want to do something just like you do for a brand. You don't want to just take a check if it's not going to prove to be worth your time.
And if you think of from a creator perspective, right, creators always pick a hub, right? Whether their hub is Facebook, whether it's YouTube, whether it's a blog. And then they use these other platforms as ways to sort of advertise who they are, advertise what they are, and end up building audiences on them. So I think of myself as a blogger, right? My blog is my home, but then I use YouTube as a way to connect in a very real way with people. I use Twitter as a way to drive people back to my content. I use Facebook as a way to post snippets of my content so people can get interested to come back to see my content.
Yeah, and you can't just repurpose. I think having a multi-platform approach is important just to get the amplification as well. Every brand campaign we do isn't just for one platform or the other. We do a Vine campaign, but then we amplify it on YouTube. We do a campaign with one of our creators on Facebook, but there's no monetization, so we amplify that on YouTube, and we amplify that on Instagram and Vine. We do something on one platform, you amplify or you engage on different platforms. That's the smart approach. That's what we call rightcasting.
I think the way I would put it is YouTube is the Walmart of content. And you need to start opening your small showrooms. But I think everyone needs to be shown in Walmart. And you don't become Walmart by opening showrooms.
So a big department store, that's right. That's good. So Dave, just wanted to discuss about the unique usage on YouTube. There are, 300 hours of video uploaded every single minute on YouTube. One of the massive usage is that people are paying tribute to their stars. So would you mind to talk about it, how people are uploading your cover version on YouTube and how they engage and they relate to their favorite content?
Yeah, sure. So you can look at a great example would be Disney's Frozen. So you go type Frozen, you'll get literally hundreds of thousands of videos, right? And if you followed Frozen's box office, when Frozen released, it was at #2 for a few weeks, then it jumped to #1, then it sort of fell off the charts for about 6 weeks, and then it reclaimed the #1 spot and stayed there for quite a long time. And there's a lot of things that contribute to that. #1 is a great movie, but you also have to have a community surrounding your video. And if right after Frozen was released, a lot of kids, and then after that, a lot of very famous artists started uploading their own covers of the song Let It Go. And Disney made a very interesting choice, right? They easily could have just issued a copyright claim and had us block every video on YouTube. And they made a very different decision. They made a friendly decision, and they decided to let all of those videos stay. And they chose to monetize it, but they chose to also let their fans build a community around their video and around their movie. And I think that's one of the things that really led to the success of the movie.
Makes sense. So I'm going to ask one last question to Patrick, and then we'll take questions from the audience. So if you can start thinking about your question, would be great. So Patrick, you announced an amazing deal with 21st Century Fox. Yeah. That you guys are going to take over all their YouTube channels outside of the US and manage their YouTube presence and work on audience development. So why they don't do it internally, right? I mean, they have an army of people. Why they choose, Rightster?
That's a good question. Well, I think, years of experience on platforms like YouTube gives you an advantage. Plus, there are tools and technologies that we've built on top of the YouTube APIs for efficiency. Also, big companies like this, once they make the decision, things can move very quickly, but oftentimes they have little fiefdoms and every country is using a different platform and every country has a different style. So to be consistent, having a consistent first upload, search engine optimization, look and feel across all the YouTube channels in every single market is beneficial to them. Being able to do something that they would have a hard time doing, which is geo-restricting trailer releases by market to make sure that search for that film in Italy only gets the Italian trailer, is something that's very tricky that we spend a lot of time doing. So normally if you don't have a coordinated approach for an international brand, then all your search queries will lead to the American version because that was first and that gets the most views and therefore the foreign language options are drowned out. So that's, there's a technical art and science sort of blended benefit. And on top of that, we have relationships that they don't have in every market with creators. So for every film release, it's not just about the YouTube channel, it's about social influencer marketing. We did 6 different videos in 6 different countries around the film release for The Kingsman with, in one country it was a prankster, in the next country it was a parkour athlete, in the next country it was a beauty blogger, each doing something associated with the Kingsman ethos in their own style, which would be very hard for them to do themselves. So when I talk about collaboration, these sort of partnerships are really important. And for us, we're seeing more and more of these big sort of enterprise level relationships.
Sure. And creators will come up with ways to promote your content that you never ever thought of.
Yeah. So is there any question from the audience? Would you mind to lower a little bit the light so we can see the audience here? Any questions for Patrick, Arunabh, Dave? I can't see anything. Still sleeping? No.
That means we have answered them all, I think.
So let me ask one last question myself. So what's going to happen next, right? I mean, we talk about new technologies and new platforms. There are new technology coming. Facebook acquired Oculus. And what about, for example, virtual reality? What is going to be the impact, on virtual reality on all this kind of social engagement and fan engagement? So what's next? What's next in terms of technology, and what's next for you guys?
I think I'll try to answer it from a content creator point of view.
Yeah.
So take 25 years back, our dads wanted to watch Godfather in a theater. Then we watched it on a television. Now our younger brothers watch it on laptop, and some of us are watching it on iPad. But if you, from an Indian point of view, we are still watching Godfather. We haven't still started watching Ailane Jang, Hukumat, and some of these trashy 80s films which were very big. So I think the whole aspiration for watching the best of content is going to be constant. I think the paradigm has expanded, but we do wait for a Mad Max and an Avengers and a Frozen and a big ticket premium content. That is not stopping. But while we also are fans of a chef doing a cookery show, or we are fans of a blogger who's just doing something on beauty, or we are fans of a stand-up comedian. So I think in that it has expanded. But in terms of a general audience remaining excited about the next big thing, I think that's a constant. They're going to be excited about House of Cards and Game of Thrones, and that is not changing. I think and any creator studio which is serious and wants to go up that ladder will need to sort of move themselves towards content creation in that fashion.
I think you'll see the lines continuing to blur. And I mean, you made reference to SRK, Shah Rukh Khan, being the first, the megastar of India joining your show. Yesterday, 2 days ago, Kurt Hugo Schneider, who's one of the guys at YouTube FanFest, released a video, a cover of one of his songs. And Shah Rukh Khan tweeted it, he posted it on Facebook.
And this is just after he was voted some second biggest actor in the world. And the first is Seinfeld, which is surprising. Both of them are non-actors. And he was like more than willing to come on the platform and use our thing. I think that's where the lines are definitely getting blurred.
So I think you're going to see those lines continuing to blur. I think as technology, 4K cameras cost a couple $1,000s now. You can start getting 3D or 360-degree cameras are starting to come out. You're starting to be able to shoot contours from multiple angles. So I think the technology is just going to continue to improve. It's going to be cheaper to create content. And I think as the skills of YouTubers and the content they create gets higher and higher and higher, you're going to start seeing mainstream television starting to come down to it.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that's interesting is you're starting to see a lot of learning from brands and from professional content creators and professional TV stars, taking a page out of the book of the creators to connect quickly with audiences. When Periscope and Meerkat came out, you had Ellen literally with a guy periscoping the show in front of the camera, and Jimmy Kimmel playing Meerkat, recording a Meerkat in the green room before going on stage with his people. There's a much narrower gap between the lightning flash of a new platform launching and the thunderclap of engagement, both in terms of creators and brands and fans. And so whilst YouTube will continue to expand and grow and offer an enormous opportunity for the Walmart of video, I'm absolutely excited to see what's going to happen with platforms like Snapchat. I think it's a whole new language of text, image, and video integration. It's a different level of immediacy and engagement. We have 10 years of YouTube, which changed the world. Who knows what these new platforms might do, both to how we consume, create, and engage with content. It's going to be an exciting ride. Fasten your seatbelts.
We did our live broadcast. We had 18 viewers, I think. Right now.
Yeah, we did an 18-viewer Periscope before coming on stage. Massive. We're going to be here.
But the Jimmy Kimmel ones are great. He just wrote an article the other day, or was interviewed for an article called "The State of Late," and and people were asking, "What are you using YouTube for?" And Jimmy Kimmel's got over 1 billion views on YouTube. And it was interesting. He said when he gets ratings, he doesn't really know. He knows when people watch the show or has an indication, but doesn't know if it resonated with them. With YouTube, he gets very specific feedback because you can see the comments, you can see how many people watched the show. And then, so if you take something like mean tweets, where Jimmy Kimmel makes celebrities read the mean things people say about them on the internet, right? He saw the first one got 39 million views and was like, wow, okay, this really resonates with people. And now you've seen 7 more mean tweets. There's music mean tweets. He made Obama read all the mean things people say about his presidency.
People know about him. I asked a group of teenagers the other day, I said, I'm going to say a word and you tell me one word in response. I said Facebook. They said parents. I said YouTube. They said awesome. I said Twitter. They said necessary. Interesting. I said Snapchat. They said me. Right? And so they also will not choose one or the other. They use them in concert for different reasons and different purposes. But I think we have to appreciate that Facebook is now old media. YouTube is starting to become old media to them, actually. And these new platforms are more immediate and possibly the next thing. Who knows?
So it was a great way to wrap up the panel. We're already over time. I would like to thank our panelists, Dave, Arunabh, and Patrick. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.